Travis Wayne Goodsell. So, on today's grocery trip, I took the wrong tracks, went to the airport, so I got that tour. And coming back, there was some French Guianans who hopped on board at the airport. And if you're wondering how to identify a French Guianan, well, bonjour is French. I heard them say bonjour. And then Guyana, transliterated, I can understand Guyana. French Guianans. And then on the way back, getting off at the right stop, there was a couple of Italians who did not speak English and who were trying to get to the Catholic Community Center that apparently is south and west from me. So I hope they get there. And you've probably noticed I'm still wearing the same shirt even though I'm in my new apartment. It's because the blue shirt got left behind. And I'm still trying to find shirts in all of this. Got some of it, as you can see, some of it's behind me. I've found my computer, so we'll work on getting that hooked up, but I only have the one outlet for the Ethernet, and so I'll have to see if I can find my splitters and if they made it, and my other ether cords that are longer. But this is the desk. It was awesome. Was able to buy in advance what I knew I would need in the future. So, it's the Church of the Jewish Christ of Latter-day Saints. And Mormons apparently are unhappy with that. They keep bearing testimony that it's the Church of Jesus Christ and demonstrating their bigoted, racist hatred towards the Jews. And then they claim ignorance. What? No, I'm not. It's Jesus. That's not hating the Jews. Yes, it is. Constantine created Jesus. And so, for your understanding of the different religions, Christianity was created in 325 CE by Roman Emperor Constantine. Islam, 600 CE, Muhammad. And then the Jews, it depends. In 600 BCE, Babylon took them captive, and it's actually 586, 7, somewhere around there. It was 11 years after 597, so 86. And they assimilated into all things Babylon. So the Jews are mostly from the Babylonian influence, despite the book of Daniel warning Jews not to assimilate. That's just the facts. Their calendar, it comes from Babylon. Their Semitic language, well, Babylon. All things are from Babylon. And they've lost their Egyptian origins pre-600 BCE. So when you're reading the Book of Mormon, it's about Lehi and his family who are pre-Babylonian captivity. And so 1 Nephi chapter 1 verse 2 correctly states the learning of the Jews and the language of the Egyptians. And with Emperor Constantine creating Christianity and creating Jesus along with it, Because when you start a new religion, you got to create a new God. Because if you're just using an older God, keeping the same name, you're still that religion. You're just a variation of it. So Baptists, Presbyterians, Catholics, Congregationalists, etc., 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 they're all considered Christian, even though they're all different with a variation of their Christ, Jesus. So it's technically not the same Jesus when you go to a different religion in Christianity. Right, Mormons? And so, how Constantine did this was through what is known as creeds. Joseph Smith explains this to us, and yet the church has not explained it to us. And so we have to go to the world to learn of the first creed of Christianity of Constantine. Because the church just keeps that a secret. They won't tell us. See, when I went on my mission, we were told that Jesus was real, and so were the apostles, and that they died, and the authority of the priesthood was lost on the face of the earth. And then Joseph Smith came, and it was restored, and we're not told about the succession crisis with Joseph's death, as that would be a big red flag warning that maybe Joseph Smith's priesthood was taken from the face of the earth too. Because if Jesus and the apostles died and the authority was gone, Joseph Smith gone. But Brigham Young tricked everybody into thinking that as the Quorum of the 12, he could then automatically succeed without having to go through the vote process that Joseph Smith required from the priesthood. The whole priesthood, an actual vote, not a sustaining vote, a vote. You know, like an election. And so Constantine used a sign in the heavens to claim that he was one of the various congregations prior to the creation of Christianity. And you had bishops that were in charge of each and every one of these congregations, and they were against each other. You had bishops excommunicating other bishops, and back and forth, and you had people leaving because they get in a spat with a bishop and they go and form their own church and become their bishop of that church, and they would have an apocalyptic literature, Book of Revelation, and thus a hero of their apocalypse, and it was of varying names. Not all of them were Jesus. You got Hercules, Perseus, Horus, and others of their hero stories. Joseph was even a hero. So the book of Genesis, yeah. And all of these were Jewish scriptures. Jewish. And there is, if I had to keep going back, the Therapeutae were during the time of the Roman period, of which the wrongly called Gospels, which correctly called Apocalypses, were written. And so Jesus and his 12 disciples, 12 apostles, were actually the teacher and the Therapeutae of that particular congregation. And so the Gospels, Apocalypses, were about the Jerusalem teacher and his 12 disciples, as they were using that for their particular apocalypse prophecy. Type and shadow symbolisms of the latter days. That's what apocalypse is. And so there was no literal Jesus. There was no 12. They were all fictional characters designed as symbols to teach about the latter-day Christ of the Jews. Thus, the Church of Jewish Christ of Latter-day Saints. Because Joseph Smith, likewise, assimilated from the Jewish Kabbalistic religion. And Kabbalah and the Tree of Life. And so when you see 1 Nephi chapter 1 verse 2, the learning of the Jews, that's what you're supposed to think of and learn of when you get to the Tree of Life vision and the concept of the Messiah. Because for the Jews, it's a completely different concept than what Constantine changed it to for Christianity. And if you're still clinging to your Christian definitions, your Christian beliefs as a Mormon, you're going to misinterpret Joseph Smith's works. And such is the case. And so the Cairo was the sign in the heavens that Constantine created. And it's because of the apocalyptic literature. He was trying to unite them all under Christianity with the Cairo. The Cairo, as I am the decipherer of the original alphabet, I know all about this. Because the Chi is for a village from the Egyptian hieroglyphs. And it's similar to the Tau. And the Rho is the God symbol from the Egyptian hieroglyphs. It's the flag. The hieroglyph for a flag. An ensign to the nations, a flag to the nations. Title of liberty. Oh, he's raising up the God flag. And so the God village, the village of God. Can you take a guess as to what that is? Zion. The temple is the house of God. The village of God is Zion. And so I'll take you to facsimile number 2, figure number 1. As it is correct that the 3 lumps are for foreign land. But then you see that there's 3 lines above, and I'm unable to identify what is above that, if there is. I probably could see what Michael Rhodes came up with. That book is somewhere buried. But it could be... I'm not even going to speculate. The 3 lines is water in the plural. And so it's a foreign land in water. And you have the cross for village. Foreign land, cross, waters. And so that is Zion. And as Joseph Smith says, it's the home of God. Village of God. In a foreign land, his village, Zion. And so, yes, there's a kingdom of heaven, and a kingdom on earth. And so you can translate this as the kingdom on earth or the kingdom in heaven. It has multiple translations because they're picture languages. So don't think that you can just come up with one word to define a picture. Can't be done. and yet Egyptologists still do it. There's more to the translation, guys. And so, this is what he was trying to talk about. The creation of Zion. He had done it. And so there is no need for a second coming. But Christians still looked for a second coming. Why? Well, because Constantine's creation of Christianity had fallen and shattered into over 1,000 different groups, as we now have today. And so, yes, naturally, Christians, like the Jews, are looking for their Christ to restore Zion. And likewise with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Joseph Smith was murdered and didn't accomplish it. Brigham Young accomplished it for 1 year, and then the United States took over the land, and his kingdom was instantly gone. And so Brigham Young kept fighting the United States, and eventually failed under John Taylor when the Edmunds-Tucker Act shut down the church permanently. Priesthood ceased to exist on the face of the earth. They never had authority anyway. You can't be the president of the 12 to take over as prophet, seer, revelator, and translator, even though you don't want translator. And so, this is what Nelson is doing. He's purposely preparing and setting things up for Zion of Brigham Young. Not Joseph Smith, Brigham Young. Because they have no interest in going back to Missouri. But Joseph Smith tells us in a document that Brigham Young refused to publish, because Joseph condemned Brigham Young, calling him Judas, and that he would murder Joseph. Wow. So all you ex-Mormons who don't think Joseph Smith is a prophet, what's wrong with you? Joseph Smith is a prophet. He knew he was right. That prophecy came to pass. Willard Richards and John Taylor of Brigham Young's 12 murdered Joseph and Hiram in Carthage jail. That's what the forensic evidence indicates. So why are you fighting this, ex-Mormons? I can understand why Mormons are fighting it, because they have to live in denial. Because if it's true, then that means that this church isn't true, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, created by Constantine as the Great and Abominable Church, and patterned exactly after Constantine, so that Brigham's church is the Great and Abominable Church. So a dualistic thing there, because that's exactly what Brigham Young did. He did everything that Constantine did to replace all things Jewish of Joseph Smith. Constantine turned the Jewish scriptures into Christian scriptures, the Jewish Christ symbol into a real person of the Roman period time, and the religion of the Jews into Christianity. He replaced the Jews. Brigham Young had already been conniving behind Joseph's back while a missionary, telling people it's the Church of Jesus Christ, it's Christian, join. Then you got people who come and find out that it's not Christian, it's not Jesus, it's Jewish, and so they leave, and then they form their own Church of Jesus Christ rather than the Church of Christ or the Church of Latter-day Saints in 1834. And so Brigham Young was causing lots of problems for Joseph, as he was also converting persons who were part of his secret combination called the Danites. And they were the ones getting Joseph Smith into trouble, framing Joseph Smith. Because Joseph Smith is the leader of the church, and Brigham Young is converting people who are committing crimes in the neighboring villages, getting Joseph Smith in trouble because Joseph is the leader. And so Joseph Smith is wrongfully hauled off to jail over and over and over again. And so who's taking over the church? Brigham exalts himself to take over the church when he's supposed to be out in the mission field. And so in 1838, after getting out of jail for the Danites sabotaging the Kirtland Safety Society, the financial institution, he had had enough. The church is being tarnished as a Jewish church, claiming it to be Christian. And you can even see from the Joseph Smith papers what I'm talking about, as I've got the picture that I keep showing you guys. It's Willard Richards is in the footnote for the name of the church at the beginning of the Joseph Smith history, which is technically the Joseph Smith Visions. Learning of the Jews, manner of prophecy. He's prophesying about the future Christ of Mormons, who would be a Mormon. 103:16, Doctrine and Covenants. The man like Moses, from Joseph Smith History, Vision, number 2, verse 40. You got to go to Acts, and Acts takes you to Deuteronomy, which is the Christ of the Jews, a mortal human being. And Joseph says he's going to be Mormon. and so Joseph, verse 19, has Emmanuel appear with his father Ammon, father and son Ammon, appear before Joseph Smith in this vision, not a literal history. And they tell him that Christianity is wrong because of the first creed of Christianity. And once you've established the creed of Christianity, everything that comes after that is likewise wrong. So you can't have Constantine be true, but you can pick and choose which future creeds are not true. You know, Creed of the Apostles, not true. Christmas, not true. Christmas actually is true, but it's in the Julian calendar. You've got to convert it into the Gregorian calendar, which is the 17th of March, 1970. That's the birth date of the Mormon Christ, of the Jewish male human Christ. And so, yes, St. Patrick's Day. And it's interesting because St. Patrick's Day is his death, not his birth. And it's supposed to be the prophecy of the birth, not the death of the Christ, of the Jewish Christ. It's hilarious. And so, yes, when you understand that it has to do with the latter days, signs in the heavens, the death sign, the Death Star, then everything starts to make sense because you're using Jewish interpretation, Kabbalah Jewish interpretation. You're not using Christian interpretation. Everything starts to make sense now. And so, that's pretty much it. I mean, there's lots more to talk about. I can go over all the various scriptures and talk about the prophecies of the Christ and all this stuff. And you're supposed to be looking for him, right, Mormons? You're not holding on to the false idol god Jesus, right? Created by Constantine. Joseph Smith says it is an abomination. Do you understand why it's an abomination? Why Jesus Christ is an abomination. That when you testify that Jesus is true, you are an abominable person. Do you understand this now? Because you're anti-Semitic. And not technically anti-Semitic because that's their assimilated slave term. And not their origin, which is in Egypt. And so technically it'd be Hamido, or Kemito, for the Kemet, which is Egypt. Ham is Kem, and Kemet is Egypt. And so even though Joseph Smith put Aegyptus, which is the Latin version. Ham marrying Kemet is the Egyptian's formatting. And yes, he translated correctly into Latin. Which is also the daughter of Ham and Aegyptus, or Kemet. But that's how the pattern is with the Egyptian theology, is that you have the husband who has a name, and then you add the T at the end, which is the feminine singular in Egyptian. And so the male and the female, the husband and wife, for the Egyptians. So Kemet. And Kemet is the black land, and thus Kem means black. And Latin has its version for black, and unfortunately it has been turned into a racial slur. But you gotta, it's just so frustrating that mankind can be so hateful of others. And so, yeah, Jesus is actually Amen, Emmanuel. And so, yeah, sorry guys, you've been lied to and deceived. So now the question is, are you going to go through a faith crisis? Because you're not going to believe me, but you're going to believe that the church is false. Or are you going to take what I just told you and expand upon it, plant it, and grow it, and replicate it, and produce the fruit so you can see that it's good fruit? Because spiritual witness ain't going to be good enough for this. I mean, you can do it. You might as well just flip a coin. Why go through all the trouble of read, ponder, and pray just to flip a coin? And so, yeah, that's not the doctrine, guys. You've got to produce the results of the precepts. And so the whole concept of reading, pondering, and praying is to receive revelation as to how to replicate the precept. It has nothing to do with getting a spiritual feeling that now you know everything. And nobody can tell you otherwise, because you have now hardened your heart. And humility is being truthful. If you see the stories about Jesus and he's going around saying, "I'm the Christ," and the Pharisees are all outraged, it's because they don't believe he's the Christ. But in so saying that he is, he's being humble because he's telling the truth. That's what humility means. You are telling the truth. You are not lying and deceiving other people. You know, like the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has done to us since Brigham Young. Alrighty? So this is the Church of Jewish Christ, Jewish Mormon Christ of Latter-day Saints. So, yeah, we're in the final year of the Latter Days, because the Egyptians knew, as I've done the videos to indicate this. The cross is the death sign, and the death sign symbolically, anciently, from the Egyptians even, and carried over into Babylon as well, is the solar eclipses and lunar eclipses. For they're the eyes of Horus, and this is government, right eye, left eye is religion, and sun, moon. So solar eclipse is the death of the king or the kingdom, collapse of the kingdom, and the high priest, leader of the church, or the religion that collapses. And as Pharaoh was a theocracy, it's both, and so he was both. And so the prophecies of the sun shall be darkened, moon turned to blood, stars fall from heaven, refers to the collapse of both government and religion in the latter days, in order to pave the way for the restoration of the correct religion and government. So, which side is the church on again? They're wanting to destroy the American government so that they can build their kingdom of Brigham Young, not Joseph. Because Joseph's Zion village is in southern Illinois, where the solar eclipses over the United States occur. Ta-da! The village of Zion. X marks the spot.